Welcome to episode 3 of Bonding and Beer. I am Rolando Nuñez, your host, and today we're going to be talking about bioactive materials. Let's go! Welcome back, everyone. I want to share with you guys a little bit of what has been going on since we recorded our last episode of our podcast. I did a tour around Mexico. I visited 5 cities in Mexico. I visited Morelia. I visited Ciudad Juarez. I visited Guadalajara, Tijuana, and Chihuahua. And I was there lecturing. Each one of the venues had anywhere between 150 to 200 people. Actually, there was one, Chihuahua, very impressive. There were about 300 to 400 people, attendees to the presentation. It was a great moment. And, each one of these presentations, I was able to share podium with key opinion leaders in each one of these cities. And it was awesome. Actually, in Chihuahua, there was an attendee, a lady, who brought me a gift. She gave me a mask, a luchador mask, a wrestler's mask. And this is something that is part of Mexican culture. Wrestlers wear masks. I felt like El Santo, Rodolfo Guzman, who was a wrestler, actor, and basically a folk icon for Mexicans. And of course, I did my presentation wearing my mask because that's what I do. I become one with the culture. You know what I'm saying? If you want to know a little bit about what I do and my travels and the beer that I drink and all sorts of wonderful stuff that I post on my social media, you can follow me on Instagram at Roland Bond. And you will be able to, be updated regarding my travels and beer drinking. So today's topic is bioactive materials. Now, the reason why I choose this topic is because it has become extremely popular in the mainstream, in the dental world, this bioactive material ordeal, It's almost like a requirement in today's restorative dentistry that the material is somewhat bioactive, that provides some sort of bioactive features and benefits. So in order to go deeper into the subject, I am really excited to have a guest today who is extremely knowledgeable when it comes to bioactive materials and bioactive material development. And it's going to be extremely interesting to have this conversation with him. But most important, it's going to be really interesting to have a beer with him because he likes beer. So let's crack it open. Let's get to it. We are here today with a very special guest. His name is Dr. Erick Yu. He is, correct me if I'm wrong, he's an engineer who got his undergrad from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He's also a PhD in material science from University of California in Davis. And he holds a position here at BISCO, which is Manager of Research and Development Technology. And, that is his official title. In my mind, he's my go-to guy. All right. So whenever I need information about a vast array of things that are product related, from a scientific point of view, I go to Erick most of the time because he would provide me with information in a way that I could understand it and then translate it to the needs that I will have at the time, whether it's creating slides, upcoming presentations, and whatnot. And I appreciate his knowledge so much that I let him choose the beer that we're going to be opening and trying today. And, that's how much I appreciate it. If I let you choose the beer, it's because I believe you are mildly intelligent. So I have a lot of respect for Erick. I know he likes beer. He's a at least beer aficionado, right? You like beer.
I do.
Yes. So why don't you tell us why you picked the beer that we're going to be having today?
Of course. First of all, thank you for introducing me. It's a pleasure to be here. Today's beer will be Phase 3, Pixel Density. This guy is an IPA. The company is from Lake Zurich. And like Rolando, I also do like IPAs quite a bit, so I'm sure this one, hopefully you enjoy. But otherwise than that, I think it's just, a good classic IPA. It's, I think, from some of a newer microbrewery around here. So I know, in the past you've tried Chicago Revolution.
Yes.
And
yes.
Of course, I know, Half Acre and other big Chicago ones. So today I thought I'd showcase a little bit of the Chicago suburbs and their breweries.
I have not tried this one, but I'm really looking forward to it because it's not only an IPA, but it's a hazy IPA, and I do enjoy those. So this is a 6.5 ABV, and the website's description of this beer is extremely short. It says India Pale Ale with Citra hops. Very, very short, very concise, not poetic at all. Not poetic at all. Now, I think that these guys, they could do better with the description. You know what I'm saying? The guys from Revolution hire a poet. The guys from Phase 3 probably paid an intern $4.50 an hour to write this description. You could do better. Hopefully your beer will do better than your description. Let's see what's what. Woo, let's go. Let's pour this bad boy. Yes, it is hazy. I don't like to I don't like to brag, but this was a perfect pour. This is the kind of thing a professional does. You know what I'm saying? Cheers, my friend. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Oh man, this looks good. Not like that description, but this looks really good. For those of you who are tuning in, we're about to try Pixel Density from Phase 3. The can is quite interesting. It's very greenish, so maybe this is made from recycled aluminum or something, the can, and it's very, I don't know, nature-oriented. It's got some sort of birds flying around. I'm sure there is a story behind this design, but I did saw the website that all of their cans are extremely well designed. They are pretty. So, hazy. Very, very hazy. Yes, smells fruity. What do you think?
Indeed, smells very milkshakey.
Milkshakey.
A lot of citrus.
Milkshakey.
Looks like definitely got some OJ vibes going on.
Yes, absolutely. It looks like it got some pulp. So let's try this tall boy.
Sip, 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 sip.
Oh man, this is good. This is very good, Erick. This is a very good selection. I appreciate it. And I appreciate a good hazy IPA. And I appreciate the guys from Phase 3. Now, let's dive into topic. Bioactive materials. So, many years ago, I was at an IDR meeting. The IDR stands for International Association of Dental Research. And I was in that meeting, and I met a couple of friends, and they were on their way to listen to a presentation about calcium-releasing materials. And in my mind, calcium-releasing materials at that point of my life, of my professional career, was related to DiCal. There weren't many calcium-releasing materials at the time that I knew, okay? So I said to myself, I don't want to attend one of these lectures. I don't want to attend this lecture. I don't want to listen, talk about improved dye-cal or whatnot. But these guys convinced me. So I said, okay, fine, let's go. And then I sat down, and it was extremely mind-blowing. It was something that I will never forget. I had practiced dentistry in a way where I would avoid applying any liner, avoid applying any base, just do direct bonding, unless there was an exposure. If there was an exposure, there was a different approach, but I didn't believe in any of that. When I saw this presentation, this session, because the session was about calcium-releasing materials, it was an eye-opener. And I said to myself, okay, I need to dive into this more. I need to know more about this. I need to do more research about this, because this seems like could be a game changer over time, So you're here, and I would like to know, how would you define bioactive materials?
Sure. So it's funny you mentioned that. I think bioactive really got a lot of attention recently. Back in the 70s and 80s, when people were designing materials for this, I don't think they had the intent of thinking to be claiming bioactive. So really, by definition, it just means something that can induce a biological response. And so, that could be, some products back in the 70s and 80s could, by, really that definition loosely, be bioactive. But nowadays, what I would really say is it's primarily a buzzword, but not always in a bad way. So a lot of attention on bioactive is good. We're trying to improve restorative materials by making them more bio-friendly, biocompatible. Now you'll see claims like, appetite-forming, antibacterial, and whatnot. So I would say loosely, bioactive it's still, in my opinion, from R&D, a little bit of a buzzword, but it's leading the way to good materials design and innovation, really, in those products.
So, what I find interesting is that when I listen to people that lecture about bioactive materials and whatnot, they don't talk about the past. They don't talk about, for example, glass ionomer cements or glass ionomer bases or even glass ionomer restoratives, whether they're your more traditional, powder liquid type of glass ionomer or your resin modified glass ionomer and whatnot. When you say the term by definition, would you be able to categorize glass ionomers as, bioactive based on what you know today?
There's actually a lot of good literature actually on glass ionomers that do show it's being bioactive. So by definition, yeah, glass ionomers are really heavily fluoride releasing. They have a lot of ions packed in there. They are naturally acidic, whether it's good or bad, so it always induces a biological response. So yeah, I would consider them bioactive, but it's nowadays it's marketed and interpreted not as such. And honestly, in the current definition, there's probably better materials to choose from. But there's a lot of healthy publications, good and bad, but they all show that glass ionomers can loosely be considered bioactive.
I hear you talk about, by definition and also by design. There seems to be a difference going on, and I could understand by definition, but when it comes by design, if you are designing the development of a material, and one of the features is, or the most important feature is that is bioactive, what kind of hurdle do you need to clear from a regulatory perspective to be able to allow the company to claim bioactivity, that material is bioactive?
This one I need to hydrate before I answer.
Okay. Sorry for the lengthy question. You know what I'm saying?
This one's got a lot to it. So, strictly from an R&D point of view, we have a lot of good methods, techniques, literature that we can always consult for testing. So, bioactive for us, we have a good idea coming into what a material should be to be bioactive. I touched upon like antibacterial, appetite forming. These are good benchmarks, and there's actually ISO standards for them. So ISO 3990, antibacterial. ISO 23317 is for appetite forming. So on one side, we can, design it to be what it is. I could, if I was designing a car, I can put, 500 horsepower in that guy. It's going to be a fast car, I'd hope. But ultimately, like you mentioned, regulatory, they're kind of the ones that, in a good way, govern how a product should be sold, marketed. So we may be able to convince them that there's a lot of good data there, but really it's their discretion on how they want to clear that device's claims. So there's been successes in the past, always kind of as the industry, evolves, the FDA kind of changes their scope and regulations. But really, for the most part, design is one way. That's all. It just comes down to the numbers. The R&D team, and then regulatory is who we basically have to convince that our device is doing what it should be doing.
Okay, so it's so interesting what you're saying, because it seems like even though you have a design in mind, you need to prove to the governing bodies that the product is doing what you are claiming that it's doing based upon benchtop testing and ISO, compliance. Could you explain to our listeners what ISO, because you mentioned 2 ISOs, and maybe some of the people are like, what does it mean by ISO? What does that mean?
Yeah, so ISO, International Standard Organization, they try to set very reproducible, well-controlled methods that any lab can really effectively tackle and then test. Of course, these products are being used in people's mouths, and everyone's oral environment is very different. Some people can love drinking soda and never get a cavity, and then some people, the moment they just take one swig of Coke, the next day, they have a cavity or something.
Right.
It's the same way with a lot of the design, is that ISO tries to make a good in vitro or benchtop, as you said, test. That gets translated, hopefully means that in clinical cases it works. So it's always, yes, it's a little bit of a prediction. You can put it, how you think the numbers will play out, but in the end, to the customer, it could be something else.
So if a customer sees a product that claims bioactivity, and it has been cleared by the governing body, and just so our listeners know, the governing body for dental materials is the FDA. Okay.
For most classes, yes.
Yes.
Yep.
So we here at BISCO submit our paperwork, our documentation, all of our information that we gather in order to have clearance from the FDA. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the FDA doesn't approve a product, it clears it to be commercialized, correct?
Yes, I believe that's the correct terminology.
Yeah. So whenever you see a product that says FDA approved, that's a lie, is it not? Yes, it is a lie. The problem here is that Erick is extremely careful with what he says. I am not. If you see a label on a material that says FDA approved, that's not right. No material has a label that says FDA cleared. You are cleared in order to commercialize, right?
Yep.
Technically, yes, Rolando is right. However, the context is missing. Hi there. This interruption is brought to you by Jeremy. The FDA does approve plenty of products, just not Class 2 medical devices, like the ones Rolando is talking about. Class 2 medical devices only require pre-market notification instead of pre-market approval. So when Ro talks about how the FDA-approved labels aren't accurate, he is referring to FDA labels on Class 2 medical devices. Now let's get back to the show.
Okay. Now, one thing is that it says bioactive. The other thing is what's going to happen clinically, like you just described with the soda, correct?
Yeah.
Now, if I buy the product that says bioactive, do I have 100% reassurance that it's going to do what the product says it's going to do?
Sip, sip, sip.
Even if it's cleared by the FDA. Is that something that I can definitely trust?
Mileage may vary.
Okay. What does that mean?
So, kind of like how I mentioned, there's products, glass ionomers, calcium hydroxide-based products. People have used them successfully for many years. I mean, they've been in the market for decades, So there are a lot of good cases and clinical data and expertise that people will say, these materials are bioactive, it's causing me no problems. My patient has, healthy, restorations. They don't see any signs of decay. It seems like the body's working well, right? Then you can also have new products too. They have bioceramics now, advanced, MTAs, calcium silicates. These ones by design are supposedly better. not as acidic. They have calcium release, fluoride release, you name it. But the problem is those don't have as much clinical data sometimes, and then in many cases, just they're newer. So many times you don't really know how they will perform. But by design, they are meant to be better.
Now, do you feel that in restorative dentistry, using bioactive materials could lead to positive outcomes?
Yeah, I do think so. That's the general trend you see with these products nowadays is I'm probably willing to hang my hat on it that if I had a cowboy hat. And
Be my guest.
Oh, thank you.
Be my guest, brother.
In about 5 or 10 years or so, I would say there is going to be a lot more bioactive products out in the market. Just the new ISO standards coming out are a good sign that these are becoming really the center of attention. Ourselves, in our lab, we focus a lot on bioactivity and, materials designed for that matter. But definitely it's a good movement in the right direction.
Sure, bioactivity is something that everybody wants or every company would like to have a bioactive product. And some companies do have the ability and and how do I say it? They are legally able to claim bioactivity. However, I believe there are limitations of bioactive materials. What do you see as current limitations that we have now that we have to overcome?
Most definitely, bioactivity is something where your body has to respond to it naturally. They want to think it's almost part of the normal tissue. They don't want to freak out when it sees material. So almost all bioactive materials, by commonality, do have a very good solubility in water, and that's sometimes in dentistry not always a good thing. So in many cases, like when we're talking about adhesives, we go through many generations where you always have to have that hydrophobic finishing layer. Right?
Yes.
And in cements, composites, you have to have the margins be resistant to washout. You have to have be completely impermeable to water. So bioactive materials right now, one of the biggest challenges is that whatever way of imparting it, usually fillers, but sometimes resins too, you're going to make the product a lot more water soluble. So you will
which is necessary to some extent, right?
True. Yes, you do need to have that to have the ion release. But there's fine tuning, of course. So a lot of biomaterials, they naturally, if you put them, let's say I load up a composite with these bioceramics, it's going to compromise the strength. It's going to compromise the water solubility. You'll probably lose a lot of the benefits that composites are intended to, do. But in other product classes, base liners, endo, those materials actually naturally are hidden away, right, tucked in the tooth. So that's a better application for those. So depending on your product class, you can't just guarantee I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of bioactivity in something and then make it still a great product.
Right. That was awesome. What does the future of dental product development looks like?
Well, I would definitely say that composites, they're always going to have their own goals, better materials, less volumetric shrinkage, polish better, wear better, whatnot. Specifically for biomaterials, I do see that we're probably going to see a lot more of the product types that naturally go closer to a tooth, your adhesives, base liners, endo, pulp, all of those guys are probably going to see bioactive materials introduced in the future. We saw that with, glass ionomers going to calcium hydroxides and then MTAs, calcium silicates, bioceramics. We don't really have any good bioactive adhesives, out in the market, or at least not a lot of options, and then cements likewise. So I do think that one of the big goals is going to be putting bioactive materials where you can in those products, and then really hopefully designing them where they still improve the materials to make them universal in any product where you want to have them be user-friendly, less steps. If you make a product that is bioactive, but the dentist has to change the whole protocol, that's also, not a good thing. So I would probably say, it's a balancing game, but you'll slowly see bioactive materials creep up more and more in products.
One thing I see a lot of people complain about is waste. I remember you and I were talking about how much material is unfortunately spent at the mixing component of the syringe, like how much you're actually dispensing and how much is actually curing on a tip. Do you think like waste is going to play a big role in the development of new products?
Yeah, outside of bioactive materials, I do agree with that. We do see a lot of new products actually try to think about this in mind. You know, a lot of it actually no longer is the materials design part of it, but now it's really packaging,
Delivery
syringes,
system,
you know,
yes.
more of the
Yeah.
engineering side.
Right.
That's definitely a big trend. I agree with that. Bioactive materials too, hopefully, you know, with that pushes a little bit of the materials design away from your traditional resins. You know, so that's something as well to think about, is that, you know, these composites, you know, they're a mix of plastics and fillers. You know, kind of with other industries too, less plastic waste is always a good thing. So
Of course.
naturally, bioactive materials may come hand in hand with more sustainable materials, green materials, you know, naturally sourced ones. You know, that's a whole area of academic research that I think there's a lot of interest in, but
Of course.
a little bit new for the commercial industry.
Well, you know, but research needs to start somewhere, and it's usually in academia. And I believe that here at BISCO, we have a lot of respect for, you know, academic research, and then of course we take whatever we can and try to apply it to product development, and you know, that's a different story. That's another topic. Now, let me ask you something. You know, we talked about governing bodies and talk about how the FDA needs to clear stuff. There are a lot of products out there for the human consumption
Sip, sip.
that are not cleared by the FDA, like supplements, correct?
Right. So that's something, you know, a lot of customers have to be aware about. This is complete outside dentistry now, but, you know, if you're shopping over the counter for, you know, your protein powders, your vitamins, you know, all of those guys don't go through the same process as a cleared medical device. So you have to read the fine print of those. You know, I myself, you know, I tried taking, you know, protein powders. You know, I want to get a little bit jacked. No,
No,
kidding.
no, I get it.
Working
I
on
get
it.
it. I get it. Yeah,
But
yeah.
no, it's if it says, you know, take these daily and you'll become, you know, the next Schwarzenegger, it's gonna have a lot of fine print at the bottom that's gonna say healthy diet, physical trainer, good sleep. You know, you gotta take these other 20 supplement. No, just
Yeah,
kidding,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
that's-
yeah. 12 glasses of water every day.
Yeah, so that's something where, you know, dental products can't, you know, skirt. Right to the point,
Right.
you know.
So if
FDA
the
job.
supplement says take 2 of these and you lose weight, that's most likely not true, right?
Could be just that it's forcing you to pick up all the
It's
good
not
habits.
true. You want to lose weight, you go out there and take a walk for 45 minutes. Stop eating crappy food and take care of your life moving forward. I surely hope that our listeners are able to gather information that could be useful, hopefully will be useful. So we are going to kind of like wrap it up. So, road tip. Don't believe everything that you read and that they tell you when it comes down to a product in the box, in the packaging. Just don't, all right? You know, attend events, do your own research, do your own reading, continue learning. Because this bioactive material world, even though it's been around for a while, it's fairly new. We're trying to, fine tune it. We're trying to be able to describe it and define it way better than we were, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ago. Things are totally different. So you need to take care of business in a different way, okay? Do your research, attend continuing education programs, and try to learn from the best. All right. Now let's do our beer review. Even though Erick made me drink all of this talking about bioactive materials, he's also, taking care of his pint of beer over there. So we're going to review pixel density from a 3-phase.
Phase 3.
Phase 3. It's taking a toll on me now. What did I think about this beer? I think it was great. I think it's a great IPA. It's a good, very good hazy IPA. In my opinion, it's not as bitter as I would like it or as I would prefer, but still delivered a punch like an IPA should. What do you think?
I I would probably say, it's up there on my Chicago local, IPAs list. I always like to support the microbreweries
100%.
over, the big box ones. And so this one actually was one of the more recent ones I found that, I really enjoyed. I feel like, back in the day, there was a lot of hype about making IPAs.
Yes.
And now that it's kind of, moved on, other, genres are getting more popular, it's getting more competitive, right? Making a good IPA. So I do think this one is a pretty, good one. It's a good chat over. Let's talk about something, kind of have a beer. You don't want to completely have it and then have no idea what we're talking about. Right? So,
Well, now let me ask you, what would you pair this beer with?
I feel like a good hand-in-hand is always pizza.
Pizza.
IPAs and pizza, for me, is a good burger.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Two.
If I'm having IPAs, I crave burgers for some odd reason. If I'm having lagers, I crave pizza. But that's a conversation for a different day. Now, did it match the brewery description? It says India Pale Ale with Citra hops. Not very creative. Phase 3, I'll give you that. Yes, it did match that. Absolutely. You think it matched the description?
Yeah. No nonsense. Just what you're getting yourself into.
Yes, you do. But I do like the poetic component of it. So, beer rating 1 to 5. I'm going to let you rate it first. Go ahead.
I'll give it a solid 4.3 out of 5. It's up there. Not the top of the pack in my opinion, but definitely something if I'm looking for, it would be like, ooh, I see that.
So the way my rating works is like this. Anything above 4, you need to try. Anything about 3, if you find it, great. You don't need to go out of your way. If it's below 3, you should it's garbage in Rolando's world. So I'm going to give this one a 4.1. Very close to what Eric gave. I would prefer something a little bit more bitter, but because this is a microbrewery, this is a local thing. This is from Chicago, from Lake Zurich, from the suburbs. You gotta give it some love. I do that. And here in Chicago, we have big ones like Goose Island, for example. Mm-hmm. I don't drink that. Do you drink Goose Island?
I do. I mean, there's a few good classic staples there.
I don't. Goose Island belonged to the big guys. They gave it away. Now we're talking about microbreweries, and we're not gonna get into that. But I agree with you. You need to support the little guys, the guys who are trying to make it out there. And you know what? The only way they're gonna make it is if we buy and try their beer, and if we like it, we purchase it again. Now, would I drink this again? Absolutely. Actually, I'm going to go get some. And because it's a local beer, I'm going to be able to find it anywhere. When was the last time you had this prior to today?
They actually have a new tap room in Elmhurst that I went to maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. So
is it a nice one?
Yeah, it's very nice. They got burgers there. You can pair them.
Of course.
They also got a double version of this that you can watch out
for. Okay. Yeah. Well, so I will Uber there. Not a good idea to drive. But thank you for the recommendation. And well, that's our beer review. So again, 4.3, 4.1. You need to try it if you can. Ever in Chicago, look for it. Okay. Phase 3 or 3 phase?
Phase 3.
Phase 3. This is pixel density. All right, so we're going to go through our question and answer section. And just so you know, Eric, these are questions that we get through our email, which is bondingandbeer@gmail.com. And these are also DMs, direct messages that we get through our Instagram account, Bonding and Beer. So this is a question from Jimmy Hayes from Indiana. Are glass ionomers bioactive? Go.
I would say by design, maybe they didn't intend it to be, but if you consult literature and clinical expertise,
Sip, sip.
I would say it does have some good convincing data that it can be. So I feel like I'm giving a lot of these vague answers, but yes and no. So it's going to be, your mileage may vary.
Okay, so
see how it works in your case.
So Jimmy, the answer is yes and no. Your mileage may vary. That's very convincing answer from Dr. Erick Yu, and that's okay because it is what it is. By design, Jimmy, Dr. Hayes, I'm sorry. By design, it was not intended to be bioactive. It just happens to be that it is, or it might be, but there is no way to correlate that to our current definition of bioactivity. So let's look for another question here. This question is from Ann Beckett in San Diego, California. Can a composite restorative be bioactive?
Ooh,
Wait. So,
Yeah.
and what I think what Dr. Beckett means is a final restorative.
Yeah.
Not the one that is hidden or covered, but a final restorative.
Yeah, like a filling.
Yes.
Class 1, okay. Yeah, so even more so in this case, probably not intended to be bioactive by design. Composites definitely put their priorities elsewhere. Strength, sculptability, handling, polish, wear, etc. But like in many cases, you might be one of the lucky people where your environment, your cavity is just doing well by itself, and you put in there and you don't have any problems with it. So in short, this one's probably a no, not intentionally by design, but you can have very good clinical outcomes besides it being bioactive.
Right. So you really can't, the whole thing, like, let's say somebody places a film with a product that claims to be bioactive and the film performs really well. It's not necessarily because of its bioactive ability, but probably by the technique, the physical properties of that material, and just the oral conditions, correct?
Yeah, you got to give the dentist who's doing that some love. They did a good job.
Absolutely.
So if they did a great job, cleaning it out, putting the adhesive, following IFUs, putting in the composite, it can be a very good restoration. Bioactive is just there to, help nudge it in the right way.
Absolutely. So this is our last question from Dr. Jordan Babel out of Madison, Wisconsin. Would beer be considered bioactive? I got this one. Yes. Beer is bioactive. Why? Because it generates activity in my bio. Every time I drink a beer, I put it on my bio, I put it on my Instagram, I put it on my Facebook, so it generates activity. Also, biologically, it makes my heart so warm, and it makes my soul happy. What do you think, Erick? Is beer bioactive?
I agree. It's making, as you said, it brings joy to the world, and also now I gotta hit some miles and running to work off that extra activity that's giving you. So, it's there. It's got calories. It's got everything you need.
Absolutely. So that was the last question. We're going to wrap it up for today. Thank you for joining our Bonding and Beer podcast. Again, if you have any questions, comments, you can send it to us through our email, bondingatbeer@gmail.com, or you can direct message us through our Instagram account, Bonding and Beer. Remember to subscribe to our Instagram account and to our YouTube page soon. And our next episode is going to be silane containing concoctions. Thank you so much, Erick. Thank you for coming, for all your extremely insightful information. Thank you to all of you for tuning in and listening to our podcast. But most important, thank you, Jeremy. Big shout out to Jeremy, our producer. Without Jeremy, we wouldn't be here. Could you believe that we came to this episode and we didn't have our beer? And this dude drove a bunch of miles just to get us this beer, because we're not sponsored by anybody. We need to pay for our stuff. So our reviews are legit. It comes from the heart. Thank you very much. And I'll see you and I will talk to you in our next episode. Let's go.
Thank you, everyone.
Dude, I am so fucking tipsy. It is not even funny. Woo, we need a cigar. Is it okay? It's like a cigar, not a cigarette. Cigarette is kind of like nasty, but a cigar. Will that be too much if we smoke a cigar here? Yeah, probably.